Just moments before taking the stage for the Chicago stop of the Russell Simmons Deaf Poetry Jam National Tour, the walls came crashing down around her. No longer able to ignore, outrun, or outwill her inner demons, Bassey Ikpi began the long, often painful process of finally accepting and addressing her truth. She had bipolar II. Undiagnosed for years, calm was now the storm, and the journey to stronger mental health was just beginning. Please join me and New York Times best-selling author, poet, and my new BFF, Bassey Ikpi, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Bassey Ikpi, hi.
Hi.
I have been looking forward to this conversation since the first time we met. You and I met, I've only been in this role for just under 6 months, and I was here, I just started when we met. You were the keynote at the Thresholds big gala. And I remember I was a guest of the chair, Dr. Suzette McKinney, so I sat at her table. And next to me was this fantastic creature. And we looked at each other, unbeknownst to me who you were, because you and I both tend to change our hair like Chicago weather. Good for us. And we started talking. I kind of looked at you and I was like, hi. And you looked at me and I was like, oh, I love her spirit. Remember?
Yes, I
And
do.
we just started talking. And then slowly but surely, it started to weigh on me. Oh my gosh, this is the keynote. It's the reason I came, because I saw, but the picture, you changed your look so much, and I love that. But what it reminded me of is when you meet someone, to like them before you know who they are or what they represent, or that they are a New York Times best-selling author. That was so special, and you were so kind, because you had the stress of doing it. It was a fireside chat. You did. You read a beautiful poem, and I remember sitting there as you were doing that, going, "I don't know what's ahead. This show wasn't even conceived yet." And I remember going, "But I've got to continue dialoguing." We become friends. I check on you. You know, we're text friends.
Yes.
But I knew when this show was conceived that you were going to be a guest, and I reached out to you and said, I did not forget our conversation. I want us to continue. And you immediately went, yep, let's make it happen. So thank you for that.
course,
But
thank
thank you
you.
for that night. What you did for us that night is why I knew that our audience needed to, for the few who have not, because it's the New York Times bestseller. You've been on the Deaf Poetry tour. You are successful. But your story reminds me of, sometimes we look at someone and we see the titles and we don't understand the living that happens just beneath that.
Right.
So I want to begin this. I both listened to and bought the book. I would say to anyone, do both, because you narrate. And you are a poet. You know how to tell a story. And there were moments this weekend as I was walking through my house, and I did it in a day. It was done. But you would take me on this journey, and my heart, I just, you know? And it began on page 1, if I may.
Absolutely.
Throughout her early childhood in Nigeria and adolescence in Oklahoma, Bassey Ikpi lived with an overload of emotions, cycling between extreme euphoria and deep depression, sometimes within the course of a single day. In her early 20s, Bassey became a spoken word artist and traveled with HBO's Deaf Poetry Jam, channeling her experiences into art. But beneath the facade of the confident performer, the symptoms from her childhood were building, and Bassey's mental health was in a precipitous decline, culminating in hospitalization and diagnosis of bipolar II. Let's begin.
Did I write that?
You did. It's here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm like, did I write that?
It's in there.
Okay. I'll take it.
Okay. Yes, it's yours. It's beautiful. But let's begin in Nigeria, and let's talk about, tell us about the two people who created you, your mom and dad.
Mom and my dad. My mom and my dad are the two people. Of course, they created me, but I get so many. My friendliness, my ability to talk to anyone, I get that from my mom.
And she's a nurse, so that's a good skill to have.
She's one of those nurses that people remember, like 20, 15, whatever years ago, they remember her. And my father is a little quieter, but he's also very kind. And he's the one that teaches you to open up your heart and just let whatever happens happen. Let people be who they are around you, make them comfortable, so that you can be comfortable. I get that from my dad.
Okay.
It's difficult because I didn't live with my parents, with both of them, until I was 5, because my dad was back and forth from the States.
Okay.
My mom was in nursing school, so I stayed with like my grandmother and my auntie, and basically the entire village kind of just raised me. And I think that is a large part of why I revel in community and family, and I often say that I've never felt unloved. I might have felt unliked. I might have felt dismissed or unheard, but I've never felt unloved. That is not something that's been part of my world, and it's because of the way that I was raised and the amount of community and family I was surrounded by always.
It takes a village, literally.
Literally.
Wow.
Yes.
Speaking of which, tell me a bit more about this 4'9" powerhouse that was your maternal grandmother.
My grandma. We called her Ma. And she was, I remember right before she passed on, I'd lost the language because I came to America. It was because of the part of Nigeria we're from. There are not a lot of Nigerians who speak the same language, and my parents were really, really, they wanted me to fit in. They wanted me to, because they went to school, and they wanted me to be able to, communicate with other people. And so they stopped speaking to me in Yakur and, only English. So when I went back to Nigeria, it was so difficult for us to communicate. It was so difficult for us to have a conversation because my vocabulary was so limited, and she knew no English. So what she would do is feed me. She remembered the things that I liked from when I was little. Yeah, there's chin chin, which is like a doughy like pastry. She remembered I loved corn, so she was always just offering me things to eat.
Her love language, that was the new love language.
Yeah, that was love, and it's. I see so much of, in the process of writing the book, I learned so much about what I didn't know about my mom, in that we're all products of the stories that we had before, right?
Absolutely.
So you had a story before you met mine, and then now our lives have intersected, but who you were, that journey you were on before we met, informs the way that you experience me and the way that you move forward, and realizing that the relationship I had with my grandmother is different than the relationship that my mother had with her, and being able to understand that I didn't have, or she didn't have, the benefit of my dad, sort of balance those things out. But my grandmother was just, I don't even have words to be a writer. I don't really have words. I have a poem about her that I wrote because she represents home to me, and represents the idea that even at my most lost and my most confused, she was like that North Star. I belong somewhere. I belong to someone, and that person is not around. I can't touch them. I can't even really talk to them. I can't talk to them on the phone because we don't speak the same language. But she exists somewhere, and she was just a beautiful reminder of all of that. Yeah.
I want to talk with you, and it's interesting. The title of your book is so true. I'm telling the truth, but I'm lying. What a brilliant title, but truly prophetic. And once you read this, it makes so much sense. So tell me about the incident in Ms. Zarofsky's class that happened per Google in 1986,
Yes.
per your memories in 1984.
Yes.
Talk about that incident and how it impacted you at such a young age.
So the incident was the Challenger explosion, and we're about the same age. And I remember we learned about it. The what was her name? The first teacher in space, and we.
Christy McCullough?
Christy McCullough. There she is. There she is.
Yeah. And we're not the same age because I was in college when that happened. But go on. But I love you for thinking it. Go on.
We're the same age. After a certain
Love it.
point,
Absolutely. After a certain point, it's Oprah money. You're just rich in spirit. Go on.
basically, and I love that. I'm taking that. Thank you. But yeah, so it was a Challenger explosion, and I remember being really excited about it. We were all excited about it. We learned about it. Teachers were excited about it, and they wheeled the television in so that we could watch. And I was so excited. Like I could feel myself almost erupting in this way that I knew.
You almost couldn't manage yourself.
Yeah.
Like you were working to manage yourself. Just like
if I knew Wusa and
Yes.
all that, I would have been able to like meditate
Yeah.
or something. But I'd always been very excited about things. Like I got very excited about things in these very large and explosive ways, and this was just another thing. And because I was so excited, I took my eye off the ball, and I looked away because I wanted to like experience it. And it's like, calm down. You get too high. I'm what, 8 or 10, depending. And I was trying to talk myself down, and I looked away. And when I looked back up, it had exploded. And I don't know how, don't know why, but for some reason, my brain decided that my looking away, my choosing my own comfort over protecting these people, I had caused it somehow. And that is when that's when I remember my first sort of experience with anxiety. And what I've learned since I wrote the book was that it wasn't my first experience. My first experience was in the 3rd grade in Mrs. Zorowski's class when I threw up on her shoes.
yes.
Yes. And for some reason, I just sort of tied those things together because part of the reason why the book has that title is that I have an emotional memory. I don't have like a chronological memory. I don't remember dates and things like that all the time. But I remember what you were wearing. I remember what it felt like. I remember what it smelled like. And so those anxious feelings started in the 3rd grade. And because my memory attaches itself to the emotion, it just put it there because it just made sense to be there.
Wow. And talk about the circumstances that took you from Nigeria and brought you to America, and how your mental health, how that impacted that as well.
Going back, I think that I always felt stable because I stayed where I was, and my parents would come and visit.
And you had your North Star.
And I had my North Star, and leaving that, and being put in this new community where I didn't see many faces that looked like mine. They definitely didn't speak the same language as me, and I had to. What my parents did, which was to keep me firm and give me firm ground so that I wasn't like moving around with them as they were doing, as they were going to school and getting their lives together. All that stuff that they were trying to prevent, and I think that to their credit, they thought, well, we're here. We're here, so you should feel that amount of stability. And I didn't. And I think that as much as it was good because it helps me sort of adapt to any situation that I'm in, I learned that pretty early.
But it takes its toll.
It takes its toll because you never really feel, when it's too easy to adapt, you forget where you actually feel comfortable. Like you forget where you actually feel like this is home. This is comfortable because I'm immediately ready to like.
It becomes too transient.
Right. I become I don't want to say chameleon because I don't change who I am, but I find the parts of myself that make sense in the place that I am, and that became too easy to do, which is why it took so long for the diagnosis, because I was very, very good. Very, very good.
Which is a brilliant segue into the next piece that stopped me cold. There's a complete chapter, it's an essay, and it's titled Becoming a Liar. Lying is how I survived this. Parceling truth is the way I avoid a descent into stronger and more damaging darkness. It's why I can still walk through this world vacillating between existing and not existing. It's how I turn off the part of my brain that needs to rest and let the other part take over. When I return, I lie. I pretend I've been there the whole time. I say things like I forgot, or I couldn't find it, or I was just kidding. Or I lie to control the narrative, deliver a well-packaged answer or joke before a question can even be posed. That resonated so deeply with me. I know it does with others, but talking about you, that everything you've just said, that resonates even deeper for me. How do you move away? How are you moving away from that, from being transient, from being able to, because you're an artist, creative, you know how to adjust and conflate. How are you working to still yourself against the default position of doing that?
Well, I had to accept the fact that is part of who I am. I think for a long time, I thought that I was the symptoms. Once you get diagnosed, it's a very comforting thing. You're like, oh, I get it. It has a name. There's an essay.
Give it a name.
It has a name, and that's comforting, but it makes you wonder who you actually are. And so I had to get to the point where I realized that those are parts of who I am. I am somebody who wants other people to feel comfortable, and it's no longer wanting them to feel comfortable because I'm uncomfortable. It's because I know what it feels like to be uncomfortable, and so I try to be a North Star, which seems very, very lofty, but I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. But knowing how to find safety is what that became. Instead of it being I'm adapting to other people, I'm creating the space that I need. And then I've also learned, boundaries and knowing that I can walk away from any situation. I can make choices that are healthy for me. One of the things I've done recently, because this book it's changed my life in multiple ways, and writing it gave me permission to recontrol the narrative, to take back the narrative. I wrote my story, and I can continue to write my story. And I learned that I can step back, par down my space and the people in it so I can focus on them and being authentic with them, as opposed to having 100 people who think that they're my friend. And they are. I love them. But I cannot give 100 people the same thing. I can give 5 or 6. And that's interesting because of how we met, because I have learned to I know you, we had a great time right here, but I'm leaving here now and I'm going to go do other things. But when I meet somebody that I want to talk to later, that I want to have that it's a stronger connection. It's firmer for me. It shows me that this person is, if not lifelong, then for a while, as opposed to people where I'm just...
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that you had a crippling fear of letting people you cared for down? I could feel it. It was palpable as I was reading this, like your fear of letting people down just put so much more pressure on yourself, or it put so much pressure on you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that and how you've moved past that.
That's very accurate. I did have a crippling fear of letting people down, and it was difficult because I never knew what people expected of me. So it was a juggling act. I've moved past it by remembering that the only person that I owe something to is myself. And when people say that, I used to shy away from saying things like that because I felt like it meant that you didn't care about
You're
anybody else.
selfish.
Yeah, you don't care about anybody else. And selfishness is fine, but it's not something that I'm comfortable with in that way. Choosing my own comfort is not selfish. Choosing how much I can offer other people at a certain time is not selfish because it gives me more later, right? So now I redefined what success means to me because for a long time I was basing success on what other people viewed as success, money or a career that did certain things or, the way that other people talk about you or talk to you. My parents' idea of success was college. You go to college, you get a degree, you get a nice job, you eat 3 square meals, you go to church. Like these are
Somewhere in there must be happiness. It must be.
It'll make you happy eventually.
Ish. You'll be happy adjacent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so being able to redefine that for myself and saying that I have done things for a long time, I wouldn't even give myself credit for the things that I've done. I was very, what have I done for me lately?
Yeah. Okay.
I was very that, and
you were incredibly hard on you.
Yeah. And I'm blessed. So I still have my moments. I still have moments where I have to remind myself. Very recently, I had a moment where my anxiety was getting to me, and I had to stop and check myself and say, "Do you know who you are,
Bassey?
Do you know who you are?"
I am in therapy. We've talked about this. I'm in therapy. I cannot, and any opportunity I get, I say to people, I probably have said it to one of our producers here, go, it's the best thing you can do to have someone. Sometimes the people who love me, they can't give me what I need, and that is clarity, and they're going to look at it through the lens of loving me.
Yes.
And that's hard for everybody. So I learned in therapy, based on my history, growing up in dysfunction, I'm a catastrophizer. So I'm now in recovery. So just like you said,
What's that?
You're always building for the shoe to drop.
Oh, yes!
Come on. When my therapist said it, he said, I was like, how dare, oh. In context, I think I know what you're saying. And we had an aha moment, and I could drill it all the way back to the home I grew up in.
Yes.
And what I find is that I've called some of my former staff going, I'm sorry, I wasn't cruel or mean, but the pressure you must have felt because success was never enough. Success made me uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because I always had to have enough equity built, and there was almost comfort in the shoe dropping.
Yes.
I came from a household when my dad left after a few weeks of being there, and it's wonderful, we go, oh. So I'm in recovery.
Yeah.
And you've got to continue to tend to it. So I found myself here in this studio a few weeks ago after walking through and good energy with the staff, got to my desk, and I'm like, don't you dare suggest that you don't deserve to be this happy.
Yes.
Don't you dare. Like, so we're saying it out loud, so I will check myself and go, you're catastrophizing, stop. And just redirecting myself. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I used to say that I didn't wait for the other shoe to drop. I waited for it to be thrown at me. Which, you know what I mean? Like, and
yes,
I was always like
you
on
understand.
guard.
Yes.
And that level of anxiety is just, yeah.
And it feels like when it changes cortisone levels, it changes,
Yes.
you're in fight or flight all the time.
Yes.
I've got one final question in about 30 seconds to get your answer.
Okay.
Tell me, how would you describe the current state of your mental health?
Content. I am content. I am not living in the past. I'm not, too far in the future that I can't be present. I am present and I'm content. I'm the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life. And that's thanks to my therapist of the last 5 or 6 years who taught me mindfulness and who taught me to always feel the ground, which is the shoe thing, which is there are no shoes.
There are no shoes.
Feel the ground.
Feel the ground.
You're barefoot, you're in socks maybe, but there are no other shoes. Just feel where you are right now. If a problem arises, you can take care of it. And it took me a really long time to learn that I could take care of it. And if I can't take care of it, that's fine too. There are people who can help me, and I will welcome that.
And I'm telling you, I knew it. Every time it happens, I'm having the time of my life. It is just never enough time. These conversations have meant so much to me. I feel like it means the world to me. I am so glad we got to have this time. I know we will be right back. Bassey and I are going to spend one more segment together with what is called Three for the Road. We'll be right back. Bassey, here's the part of the program called Three for the Road. I will ask you 3 questions. You will give me 3 answers. Are you ready to be? I know. Race, are you ready?
I feel like I'm on a game show.
Take a minute.
All right.
Okay.
Big money. Let's
Okay.
go. Let's do it.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Do it.
Question number 1. If you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would you choose and why?
First person that came to mind was Malcolm X.
Tell me why.
I have been in love. That sounds weird. But the first time I read the autobiography when I was 11, my dad gave it to me. And that the story of transformation, I don't think people give him enough credit for being able to be different than who you were without being ashamed of who you were. I did this, but now I do this, and I do this, and I keep going. And that transformation has always been such a beautiful story. I think people always talk about butterflies, and I feel like Malcolm X is what I look at when I think about transforming and being a better person than you were.
That was a fabulous first answer. This is good, yes.
All right, should it be short? Is it?
No, this is good.
Snappy?
Say what's on
Okay.
say what's on your mind. Keep it like that. Keep that. Do you have any regrets?
Yes, absolutely. I am of the mind that you should regret something, like you didn't make the best choices all the time, and I know that I didn't. I do have regrets. Most immediately about the book, I wrote about people that I loved, at a certain time, but because I didn't want to tell their stories for them, or I was only telling their intersections with mine, I don't think I did a good enough job of like showing people how much I did care for them and how good they were to me at a certain point. And I regret not loving the people that I loved more in the book that I wrote that mentions them.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah.
Final question.
Sure. I have many more regrets though. That was just one.
Listen, we could do that over dinner. I will one up you. No. Final question. One piece of advice that present-day Bassey would give her 21-year-old self.
Oh, 21.
Yeah.
You've got it. You've got it. You're worried. You're always worried about something, but you got it. That's all I needed to hear when I was 21, because I didn't know that I got it. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible to be this age. It wasn't possible. 21 wasn't going to see 30. Wasn't going to see 40. So to be here in 46.
And you honestly felt that at 20, you could not see.
Oh no, I had a month, maybe a year-ish that I could see ahead of me, but I couldn't see any further. Yeah.
My goodness. I don't believe in luck and happenstance anymore. I do believe in divine order and appointment. I think it was divine order that of all the places on that evening, you were sitting right next to me, and we both kind of went, hello.
Yes.
That's why I enjoy this life. You never know who or what is who you're going to meet or what's going to happen that can change the trajectory, even if it's for a season.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for that, my friend.
you.
And thank you so much for making time to be here tonight. Bassey and I are going to, because we have to, continue our conversation on In the Arena Extra. It is that special extra that you can find exclusively on our brand new website, cantv.org. I want to say thank you, Chicago and beyond, for tuning in tonight. Let me leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of Brené Brown. Vulnerability sounds like and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. Until next time, take good care of yourself and each other. Good night.